Welcome back, everyone. I was staring through a glass of wine the other day when I thought to myself, this might make a good video. You know, how to make an image of a glass of wine look transparent in a realistic way, kind of like this. Well, let me show you how I decided to do it in Affinity Photo 2. I started out with a couple pictures, including this glass of wine I downloaded from pixabay.com. I'll leave a link to them in the description if you want to follow along. The first thing I'll do here is to isolate the wine glass from its background. So, I'll go to my selection brush tool in the left-hand toolbar and then I'll paint over the glass. Then, I'll click on the Refine button in the top toolbar. This turned out to be a pretty good selection. So, I'll just go to the output and select New Layer with Mask. Alright, I'll click the background layer back on by selecting the little dot to the right of the layer. Then, I'll switch to my second image of this lovely woman that I downloaded from pixabay.com. I'll use the selection brush tool to isolate her from her background as well by painting over her. I've sped this up here a little so as not to bore you. Now that I have a pretty good selection, I'll click on the Refine button in the top toolbar. I'll use the Matte Adjustment Brush tool to brush over these areas of fine hair around her head. Affinity will do its best to include as much of them as possible in the selection. Once I've gone over everything, I'll go to the Output drop-down and select New Layer with Mask. Alright, now I'll copy this layer by selecting it and then clicking Command or Control C. Then I'll switch back to my wine glass and click Command or Control V to paste the woman cutout into her own layer. I'll click and drag the woman layer below the wine cutout layer so the wine appears in front of her. And then I'll use the arrow-shaped move tool to drag the corner node to make her a little bit bigger so that her face is about halfway behind the wine glass. Now, I want to make this glass and some of the wine transparent so that we can see her face. To do this, I'll select the mask on the wine layer, and then I'll go up to the color slider at the top of the right side, and I'll select a light gray color. Then, I'll go to the Brushes panel to the right of the Layers panel and select a light round brush from the Basic category, and I'll select my Paintbrush tool from the left-hand toolbar. Next, I'll carefully start painting over the areas where I want her face to show through. If you paint over a normal mask with black, it will remove all the pixels. Painting white adds all the pixels back on. But grey will leave a semi-transparent look. I'm not trying to erase everything here. I want it to look like the glass is still in front of her, so I'll go over some spots more than others. The edges of the red wine will be a bit transparent too. So, for that part, I'll go up to the opacity slider in the top toolbar and lower it down a bit. Then, I'll carefully paint over the areas of wine that I want to see through. I've sped through this part too a little bit, but take your time and be careful about it, and you'll get a good look in the end. I'll lower the opacity a bit more for the bottom edges of the wine that are a little more dense. If you need a reference to help you out, feel free to pour yourself a nice red and hold it up in front of you. Okay, now glass tends to warp the light from behind it as it passes through. So I'm going to use the liquify persona a bit on the woman's face. First though, I'll right-click on her layer and scroll down to duplicate and then turn the lower copy off. Next, I'll right-click on the top woman layer and then scroll down to rasterize to turn this into a single pixel layer. Then, with that layer selected, I'll click on the liquify persona at the very top left of the studio, and I'll select the liquify push forward tool. I can then click and drag over these areas to distort them out a little bit. I'm mostly pushing out from near the center towards the edges of the glass. There, that may be overdoing it a bit, but you get the idea. I'll click apply to bake in the changes. Alright, one final thing, and I'll let you go. I just noticed that the rim of the glass looks a bit funny. I took too many pixels off. No worries, I'll just select my brush tool, change the color to white, raise the opacity slider back up to around 71%, and then paint them back on. There, that actually makes it look much better. Alright, that's about it for today. If you learned something and want to see more of this kind of content, please click those like and subscribe buttons. And if you're feeling generous, this channel runs on caffeine. There's a link to buy me a cup of coffee in the descriptions. Not necessary, but certainly appreciated. Have a great day, everyone.